A little bit of a habitat change here, coming to some rocky outcroppings.
Yeah.
We're coming up to our 10-minute mark. I'm going to let this transect run for another 5 minutes for a 15-minute transect, just because we're in such a nice flow here, and we've got a great view of the seafloor, and we're at nice height and speed. So could we just keep this for another 5 minutes?
We can keep this as long as you like.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm digging all the flatfish. It's like a fun, where's Waldo?
Oh, there's a little squid just flew by.
Yeah. And Danny, are organism counts all done by eye, or are there other softwares or technologies to count organisms in a transect like this?
Primarily still done by eye. There is just now emerging and developing, folks are just now developing some software to help automate some of that. It's quite challenging just because there's so much variation in the organisms, and they're not always so cooperative about letting us get good views, and so it makes it hard for software to match that up. But that is something that is now emerging and could be the future of what this type of analysis will look like. I think there will always be some human element to it because that expertise is really specialized, and you know, even experts have been looking at these organisms for a long time, still just detect these really minor differences, or just have a sense sometimes for slight differences in species. So I think there will always be some human element to it, but that automation is starting to enter the field.
Okay.
Okay, we're coming up on our 15-minute mark. So we will, in about 1 more minute, end this transect.
Her copy.
That mushroom-like thing is a heteropolypus. It's a soft coral, also known as mushroom coral.
Wow, we've attracted quite a crowd of hake. You can imagine it makes it hard to count fish on a transect when those fish are following you along.
Yep.
There's quite a few in camera 7 too, off to our starboard. The other half of the school.
I know that there's devices called fish attraction devices, and by using lights, it attracts, you know, smaller fish, which then attract larger fish. Is that what we're thinking is happening with Herc, or is this just a fun coincidence?
It's pretty common for the, we do the opposite on the vehicles. We try and repel them because they get so thick we can't see anything or operate. So they're attracted to the light and they feed in the vehicle lights.
Okay, I got a little distracted by the fish there. Let's call that end transect at 130015.
Looks like an octopus
And
right by that rock.
Good eye.
Do you see that?
I did.
Taylor Ann, how's your data log going as we switched, you know, to a new zone with this watch?
It's going good. It's interesting to see all the different fish swimming around and the rockfish, and trying to pay more attention to what actually is lying in the sediment. Wow, there's a lot of movement going on. But yeah, everything is going well.
Someone tuning in from New Zealand was curious if transects, in terms of the analysis of them, is ever something that community scientists or citizen scientists can be trained on and support. Are there any projects that you're aware of where we tap into our community scientists?
We haven't employed that technique at all. I'm not aware of other organizations that are doing that. I can see how that could be helpful because there are just hours and hours of underwater footage, and it would be helpful to have folks go through it and particularly pick out certain organisms or something like that. It's a good idea. I haven't done it, but maybe there's another program out there that does. Okay, so
I'm familiar with iNaturalist, which I know is it's a app and I guess a program online where you can submit photos and help identify different plants and wildlife. And I know that it focuses mostly on terrestrial systems or on land, but it'd be interesting to expand that to marine systems. So that's an example of like a citizen science and just mass data program.
Nav, what's our time and distance to 2E?
About 25 to 30 minutes, 365 meters to go.
Great. Thank you.
I think there's there's a program called Reef Check in California that are citizen science volunteers, divers that work in certain areas to do surveys underwater, and I think some of them are in state marine protected areas. And there's another one called Snapshot Cal Coast, which is run by the California Academy of Sciences using iNaturalist, where they have these BioBlitz days during some really low tides in California and assemble groups of people to identify as much as they possibly can using iNaturalist. And it's a great way to get people involved in learning about the ocean and the coastal environment, but also in science and information and species cataloging. There are some krill swimming through here.
All right, so that was a really nice transect that we just did. We're still flying at a nice speed and height, but since we are off effort now, we are free to explore a little bit, to zoom in, zoom out, and we have about another 20 minutes or so to get to 2E.
I'd like to continue this as long as I don't put the vehicle at risk with like a pretty tight zoom, just to get a little more detail of some of the smaller critters that we
There's
might
a
not be.
heteropolypus all tucked in.
Yeah. And
That makes me a little nervous because I can't see those giant rocks coming up.
okay. Well,
I can, we just don't have time to
respond.
bump the altitude up over
Right.
to get over them.
Understood. I'll stay. I'll
we
stay
don't
here.
quite get that detail on the Mesotech, so
Okay.
when we get that fancy blue view sonar next year, the real-time multi-beam forward-looking sonar,
Nice.
we'll be able to see those fish in it. I hope
What's
so.
the
If not, I'm bringing one.
was that the dandelion-looking coral or anemone or what was that?
There's a skate off to the right.
Yeah.
Who's that guy?
If we're able to temporarily zoom in and zoom out, I'm interested in getting some of these rockfish that come across our
Yeah.
path.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we got
There's
one right there at the
Let's
lasers.
get him.
We can also slow the whole show down a little if you want more time to look at things as we go by.
There's a group of them.
There's a sea star kind of rolling around.
Yeah.
I have to, if I hold my hand on the winch, then I remember I have to move it. Keep an eye on me over here because I tend to la-di-da.
There's a couple of rockfish coming up just
Yeah.
across the lasers we can zoom
So,
in on.
If you want to do that, on the X right there, punch in .3. And that should bump you eventually on your ground. You'll see your speed over ground increase. Will take a minute. It should give you 0.6 eventually.
There's a
I'm also
A flatfish
keeping
and a
close eye
poacher.
on, camera 3.
Yeah. Couple coming
Oh,
up.
nice. We got a rockfish and a prawn and a ratfish.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Do you need some zoom? On Argus? You want some zoom? Okay, okay. There's something under the rock.
That's a nice zoom. Yeah, maybe a sea cucumber
Yeah.
under there.
Couldn't really see.
Hi, Gallagher Middle School in Rhode Island.
There's a zoom here on the
Yeah,
rockfish.
I see him.
Dan, our ROV
Oh, there's
pilot.
3 there actually.
Sorry, did I hear Dan and ROV in the same sentence?
You did. A middle school from Rhode Island was curious.
I can't hear you over there on SPL. I can.
On SPL?
You can't hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you a little better now.
Okay. Students from Gallagher Middle School, they just wanted to know how long it typically takes to get comfortable with controls on the ROV.
If you're an experienced pilot, it typically takes me personally about 3 shifts. Or 3 watches. So I have to, 2 times is a coincidence, 3 times is a charm.
Oh, let's get
So
a look at that
that's,
skate there on the right.
12
Okay.
hours or so.
And how many years have you been piloting ROVs for?
I'm now to the point where I count that in decades. So I started in this. I started really
There's a
piloting
flatfish
ROVs around
right in
2000.
front.
Oh yeah, kind of hidden.
Yeah.
Nicely camouflaged.
Yeah.
Before that, I spent the better part of 10 years building, maintaining, and repairing, and assisting the engineering team to improve the product line. So I worked for a manufacturer for quite a while. So
Oh.
the hardest part is fixing the things. It's easy to fly them.
Yeah, can you guys talk a little bit about maintaining Herc and Argus, our 2 ROVs? what do we need to do between expeditions, and what do we need to do during off-season to keep them in tip-top shape?
Sorry, I missed the first part for the maintenance.
Yeah, how do we maintain our 2 ROVs?
So every time they come on deck, we have quite a
Nice view of a hagfish.
maintenance list that is performed. One of the main ones is to ensure that no seawater is intruded into our electronics. So there's an array of quick disconnects, and we take oil samples out of all the compensated volumes. We check to make sure everything is secure on the ROV, because there's a 20 horsepower motor running a hydraulic power unit, so there's some vibration associated, which you can see when we're zoomed in, so things tend to come loose. So we basically touch everything on the vehicle. There's actually it's probably a page-long pre-dive and post-dive list that happens every time the vehicles come in and out of the water. What else? During the winter, Mr. Bob Waters does some extensive maintenance on the system, so he'll rebuild any of the hydraulic components that need attention, and he is often into the 1 atmosphere bottles to make sure everything's still secure in there. And he's usually got a list of upgrades he's working on as well. He's a tinkerer in his shop of ROVs there. One thing we haven't talked about is the winch. There's a huge winch in the belly of the ship that is kind of our lifeline back to Nautilus. And there's, I think, 5,000 meters of cable on a drum in there, and a 150 horsepower hydraulic unit. And that needs a lot of maintenance as well. The engineers on the vessel are checking it every hour, because it's running all the time, of course, as we're coming up and down. And it makes sure the cooler's running to maintain the temperature of the hydraulic oil, and all the grease points are greased, and all the mechanical bits that drive the level wind to wind the cable on and off the storage drum properly are working.
There's a prawn or something under that rock. Oh, a couple of them.
And I know we're always updating elements of the EV Nautilus. The other year we moved the winch to below deck. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it was a major undertaking. We basically had to cut open the top of the ship and do a lot of structural upgrades to accommodate the winch, and then make a pathway for the cable to come up through the deck and through an overboarding sheave through our A-frame, and put in the giant power unit down there, and all the electrical and communication lines to enable us to control it from here in the control room.
Very cool. And then this upcoming off-season, we're getting a new engine, I hear. Anybody have any details on that?
Miles has probably got more info there than I do.
I have mostly rumor, but we're going from the original five-cylinder, two-stroke diesel, for lack of a better term, main engine, to a similarly powered, much smaller modern engine that will use the same screw, but there will be a gearbox now. We're direct drive currently, So we'll get a gearbox, and it'll still be the same prop, the variable pitch prop that we use now. So I've been told that we will have DP capabilities with that, which will be enormous. We'll be able to use our main screw to maintain position, and then use our jet pump and bow thruster to add to that capability.
Hi. Cool. Can you remind listeners what DP
DP is dynamic positioning. It is what allows us to track this line that we're currently on, or just hold position and move. So our main engine, is mainly for going forward at about 10, 11 knots, but it doesn't do well much slower than that. So whenever we're in ROV operations, we're on DP.
So as we approach 2E, I'd like to talk about our next step, which will be to head over to 2F, which is a direction change there. So I imagine it might take a moment to get the ship lined up with that new heading. But what I'm thinking of as I look at the map, and there it looks like there might be some hard substrate there, is at the beginning from 2E to 2F. Might want to run a transect there. We've got such a nice flow going here with our speed and heading. If we could do that at the beginning, and then I think we might just want to run over to 2F, as it looks like a lot of soft substrate that we've already well characterized. So we might just want to try and get to 2F as quickly as possible. How does that sound for the team?
What's the bearing from between 2E and 2F, Miles?
It's going to be around 090, but stand by, I'll get you a real number.
So do you think we can swing the corner and keep on trucking at this speed?
Yeah, that corner will be a little loose, but we can do that. Oh, it is exactly 090.
What's the bathymetry like there? Is it a valley that we go through, or?
No, we will rise about 70 meters total across that distance. Gradual rise.
What do you think, Herc pilot? Can we do it? Yeah, come on, you get some confidence out there. Yes. Anatella says yes, we can do it. She's got this huge smile on her face. It will be, judging by your sonar, it will be uphill, so nothing yet, but when we do get there, so at the moment the stick's locked forward. In theory, you should just have to change your heading and swing around, and you might want to bump your altitude up before we do that. So probably when
some of these fish are well camouflaged.
About the time Miles changes the vessel course over ground.
Okay.
I would come up to 3 when we turn the corner.
That one is not.
She didn't know about our
Kind of looks like a Rosie. Oh, it's getting cold in here.
We're 35 meters from target. In 35 meters. I'm gonna wait till at maybe 5 meters. Oh. I lied. I'm doing it now.
So the dive that we're currently on is estimated to be about a 24-hour dive. So we're well into it now and should be recovering the ROVs around 12 p.m. Pacific time. Jenny, one of our viewers is wanting to learn more about fish form and function and coloring and why we're seeing so many silver gray colored fish.
Okay, just talking to Nicole about the rest of the dive time. I think we want to get from 2E to 2F
Will
as
you
expediently
cycle,
as
US
possible.
Yeah, copy that. We're Miles has just changed the vessel's course over ground, so we're going to change to match, and we're going to maintain speed the whole way, and that's probably the most efficient way to make the corner here.
Okay, so we won't be able to go faster than what we're doing now.
We can, but once we make the corner and get lined out, then we can bump it up to maybe 0.7.
Okay.
But 0.5 has been, we've maintained 0.5 for quite a while now.
Okay, so I think I'll scrap that idea of doing a time transect at the beginning in
Oh, you should still have time.
Well, I want to get to 2F as quickly as possible,
Right,
because I want them to have time to explore over there before we come up.
your timed transect would be at 0.7 or so. I think that's still within your parameters, isn't it?
Okay, we can give that a try.
Copy.
Yeah. Yep.
Some people tuning in are curious about Hercules and its weight. So Hercules weighs over 2,500 kilograms or over 5,500 pounds. Hercules has 6 thrusters, multiple high-definition cameras, 7, and really cool manipulator arms for collecting samples. Hercules is attached to Argus, another ROV, a remote operated vehicle. And Argus sits above Hercules, taking on some of that energy that's higher up in the water column and helping to keep Hercules nice and stable. Then both of our ROVs are tethered to our vessel, the EV Nautilus. But Jenny, again, some viewers were curious about fish form and function and coloring, so.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit once ROV people are all on board. Don't want to overtalk.
Heading to starboard 1 or 2 button clicks. That's velocity. Your step is 1. Yep.
So we're in a transit mode right now, right?
Yeah, sorry, is this about to call you? We just lit the afterburners on Herc, so we're coming up to the blazing speed of 0.5 knots.
Woohoo.
And if you give us a sec here, so the layback will, we'll get the layback dialed with respect to Argus. So Herc will have to change its speed a little as the layback settles in. So the boat starts moving and then it starts dragging Argus along. And so Herc adjusts its speed to maintain its distance from Argus. And once all that's moving to the east, I'll let you know, and we'll have a constant speed for you. And if you want, we can maybe push that a little to 0.7. That'll depend on how radical the terrain is.
Great, thanks for explaining that. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen between Herc and Argus and the ship, if you're listening at home. And so we're turning a corner here, so once we do that, we have to get everything all lined up again.
Yeah, it takes a few minutes for what we call our, what do we call it? Our setback?
Layback?
Laybacks, thank you. So since Argus is hanging, in this case 300 meters below Nautilus, once Nautilus starts moving, it takes Argus a few minutes to find his home at that speed. So when we were in 1,500 meters of water, can be like 100 or 200 meters behind the vessel. In this case, not so much, since it's not as much string out.
So just thinking about the question about fish form, function, color. You know, every fish is adapted to the habitat that it lives in. So I was thinking about the hake and that silvery color and seeing that we seem to see so many of them, and they're pretty quick. They spend some time up in the midwater and down below, so I don't know if they school I'm not sure if you'd call it a school since they're all over the place. I think schooling is kind of like moving together in uniform way, but we were in a big group of hake earlier, and the silveriness might be to distract predators if they're around. If they move quickly, you can flash. For rockfish, they're not the fastest swimmers. So they kind of have like a heavier form, a little bit heavier in the front, but it can swiftly move away if they need to with that nice big round tail. And in terms of the red coloration, like red disappears when you get into it's the first wavelength that disappears when you have light going into the ocean. So things look, without lights, very gray and dark. And so things tend to blend in a bit. So all those fish that look so orange and red really look really gray and dark to other animals in the ocean when we don't have this light. They also have their mouth adapted to the food that they eat.
Okay, Danny, I think we have the whole show on the road towards the east, so we're able to maintain the speed.
Yeah, we're doing between 0.5 and 0.6. It looks like we are 1 hour, 50 minutes away.
Okay, let's I'll call a start transect, and so we will keep like to be about 2.5 meters off the seafloor. If we would come down just a little bit.
Yeah, copy that.
Oop, skate.
Sorry, you wanted to be at
2.5 about. So that's looking pretty good.
Yeah, we'll come down a bit more.
Your goal is 2.3, 2.25. Third column. No.
The sun is just starting to peek up where we are right now.
Yeah, the sun rises on satellite feed 3. If you go to your quad view, you will be able to see the brilliant sea state, which is very smooth at the moment.
Yes.
As well as the sun coming up.
Skate.
Let me know when you guys are comfortable with our height.
We're down below our legal altitude limit, so we'll try and keep it below 2.5 there.
Okay, so are you comfortable with a consistent height there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I will call start transect, and that'll be 184000, start transect. We want to keep a constant height, speed, and this camera view, so we won't be zooming for the next 10 minutes or so.
I still get paid, right?
So on our habitat interpretation map, looks like possibly some mixed habitat. There's a rock. So
It's a rock.
Woo! So we'll see if that bears out, and this will be a mixed transect.
A lot of sea stars.
These small fish, they have to be counted too, right?
Yeah, they will be counted. Those are poachers.
All right. I can maybe dial back the iris a little and increase the contrast a little bit more. Yeah, I think that makes it a little easier to see the smaller fish.
Is that the turbo? Soul. Dover?
People watching at home, you can count how many flatfish you're seeing. I know that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a Where's Waldo game. They don't want to be found.
They're definitely great at camouflaging. The patterns on their body often mimic the sediment and habitat that they're in. As we run this transect, you can toggle between this view and some of the other tabs on our website. So the tech tab is super fun to learn all the details about Hercules and Argus, our two ROVs, and the vessel. Also describes our telepresence capacity. So this is the ability for us to use our satellite and share our data and our live stream with scientists and the public like you. This is great for getting input as well as just general participation from the community. It's also fun to peruse bios from the team, learn about career paths and just some fun details about people that are on the EV Nautilus right now. And if you're a school out there or a teacher listening, the Education tab has a lot of wonderful resources, great curriculum in different STEM areas, and a lot of hands-on learning opportunities for your students. Our expedition tab, you'll learn about all the expeditions from our 2019 season. As you all know, we're right now in the Greater Farallones in the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries. This expedition runs until October 11th, and then we will be going to Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, just a bit south of us. And that expedition will run from October 13th to the 18th.
We're getting a little shallow, I think. Maybe.
come into this kind of sand wave habitat. We're at 276 meters. We started this dive yesterday around, what were we at, 1,800 meters or so, and then explored some deep habitat in Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary, and then towed through the blue water to get some shallower habitat. So we are now transiting eastward across this flat expanse and aiming to get to some potentially rocky habitat about 2 kilometers or so away. Maybe a little less by now.
Feels like we're going to go all the way to the beach.
Yeah. We're seeing lots of sea stars, sea cucumbers, rockfish, flatfish, poachers, ratfish.
Hagfish.
Hagfish. So sometimes you see hagfish swimming like in their eel-like form, and then sometimes you see them curled up in a coil on the bottom. So if you see those, that's a hagfish all curled up.
Did you guys all see that article last year when there was a bunch of hagfish that unfortunately are being transported, and the truck transporting them got in an accident, so they're all over the highway?
Oh, no.
I did see that. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
So
You know you're...
Climbed the road.
Exactly.
that was down in Newport, Oregon.
Correct,
And there were some awesome photos of the poor officer that responded, in his police car and his uniform were completely slimed with hagfish slime.
So why were they transporting hagfish?
My understanding is that hagfish is a common food in some countries, so actually it was commercially fished.
Huh. I think that they use their skin too, like to make products.
I was just thinking, I think I've heard about medical stuff with hagfish.
Okay. Yeah, but I probably was sent that article by like 5+ different people, and I'm like, you know, you're a nerd one.
A marine nerd.
I think that's a green stripe rockfish off to the left of the screen.
I've seen a lot of different fishes on this shift. Skates, ratfish, rockfish, Heek.
Well, I'm going to
Flatfish.
let this transect run for another 5 minutes. So we'll have a 15-minute transect.
Copy.
We sure have, though. And hi to a viewer from Birmingham, Alabama. We are likely diving until 12 p.m. Pacific time.
Oh,
beautiful.
look at that. That looks like a long nose skate, I think, and looked like it was a male because it has the claspers at the tail. These are some new, different anemones that we're seeing. These are Metridium anemones, these big, fluffy white anemones.
I can't get over what a razor straight line this vehicle can fly. Done a lot of video transects, and I don't think I've ever seen a vehicle perform one so perfectly. There's usually a lot of wandering and upping, downing, and lefting, righting.
Starting to see a lot of pink urchins. Oh, there's a skate nicely camouflaged there on the bottom.
Yeah, we went right over them.
Yes.